Alright, let's start with the bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan Torah. Amen. Blessed are you, Lord God, King of the universe, who gives the Torah of truth and the good news of salvation to his people Israel and to all the peoples through his son Yeshua the Messiah, our Lord. Amen. Alright, as with our basic higher soul program that we're going through, we said the structure which you have been going through at the moment is going through the feasts. Alright, so your next feast out of the 7 feast lineup is Yom Teruah. Okay? So where do we go for any of our feast instructions? Okay, so open up to Leviticus 23. And find for me the stipulation concerning Yom Teruah. Okay, what do you see there, sir?
And Jehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the children of Israel, saying, in the 7th new moon, sorry, this is on the first day, we want the 10th day.
We want the first day of the 7th month.
Yeah.
Alright.
Of the new month have a rest, remembrance of Teruah, the 7th-part gathering.
Alright.
You do no servile work, and you shall bring an offering made by fire to Jehovah.
Okay. So, we have, when we do our little breakdown, we like to use the menorah as kind of an indicator. 7. For those of you, we played around with some of the more higher grading stuff. We started to break down patterns of 7, and obviously 7 feasts listed in Leviticus 23. Right? All part of God's plan. If I were to sum up from first fruits to Pesach, which month would I be talking about?
March, April.
God's calendar? Okay. Alright. Let me address something quickly. Right. When we will have Judea in a Jewish calendar. In some of our translations, they will change the name from Aviv. It'll be reference to Aviv, Nisan, but it is known as the first month. Okay? Some months later, we lose sight of biblical reference because we were in Babylon and we adopted Babylonian names for those months. So we'll have the month of Tammuz, where Tammuz was a pagan deity. Right? So I have a little bit of an issue with that. I don't like referencing that way. According to where God says it's the month of Aviv or the first month. Okay? So these are a cycle of first month feasts. Yes? Yes. Okay, everybody happy so far? Okay. Now, what's interesting here is we have, as you guys did a very broad study of this, we see Old Testament framework, New Testament fullness. Okay, I'm not going to use the word fulfillment because then we're getting to this idea that people think, well, it's been fulfilled, I don't have to worry about it anymore. That's not the case, right? It gives more meaning to. That's what I want to get to. Okay? So Passover, Yeshua was crucified as the Passover lamb. With me? Unleavened bread, he was buried on the festival of Matzah. Unleavened bread. Yes? Yes. Okay? First fruits, he is the first fruits of our resurrection. Happy? Yes. Shavuot. What happened in Shavuot? You spent a lot of time discussing Shavuot. The Old Testament is Sinai, and New Testament Pentecost. Okay, Acts 2, the pouring out of the Holy Spirit. Okay, Shavuot. Right, the Festival of Weeks. So, For each one of this side, we have an Old Testament framework and a New Testament fulfillment. Right? When we start getting into this group, and you will notice this will also have a specific month attached to it.
The 7th.
These are called the 7th month feast.
I don't mind using September, October there, because Seth is 7 and Oct is 8.
Right, but then also that comes with a bunch of funnies as well. Right?
So what do we call that 7th month? Like Aviv is the first month.
The 7th month.
Just 7.
The 7th month. So when we get to, in Israel, they'll call it the fall feast cycle. Or they will say it is the 7th month feast cycle. Okay? So we will have, just as we have here, specific days in accordance. While we're there, Pesach happened on the 14th day. Unleavened bread starts on the 15th and it carries on for 7 days. Okay, first fruits. The first day of the week, which is Sunday. Right? The first day that the Shabbat has in between these two. Okay, so it links in so that you don't have a separation between the two. Okay? From this point to this point we count 49 days.
7 times 7.
7 sevens, and then this is on the 50th day, but it doesn't give you a specific month. And then we looked at the number 50 and we broke that down into ideas of redemption and jubilee and so on.
Just an interesting thing, and is, as you said, it's not in the word that it gives you a month, but I've been keeping track and it happens every 3rd month.
Normally within the 3rd month, so
in
that
Exodus 19, on the 3rd month, they were at Mount Sinai.
absolutely,
Yeah.
but it's within that specific time. Okay? So if you want, we can put you around the time of the 3rd month, but you don't get the 50th day of the 3rd month.
Exactly.
Obviously, because each month is only 29 days and some odd, right? Okay. So when we get to the 7th month, Yom Teruah, according to Leviticus 23, happens on the
First day of the 7th.
the first day. Yom Kippur happens on the
10th day.
10th day,
The 10 days of war.
right? In between the two. And Sukkot happens on the
On the 15th to the +7, and then what the great days, the 8 is...
Now we'll put all together, it's a celebration over 8 days from the 15th, right?
Okay.
Some people make a separation and say God's talking about on the 8th day, it's separate from the 7 days of celebration. I don't make that distinction because it says you will celebrate before Him for 8 days, right? But I'll get into Sukkot when we get there, okay? It's the same as the first day and the 7th day being a convocation when it deals with the Feast of Unleavened Bread, right? It's all part of it. 8 is got its numbers and its reasons for itself. Okay, so what we're focusing is this, on this section here. So, from the outset, this is not called Yom Teruah today. It's called something else in Jewish circles.
Rosh Hashanah.
Rosh Hashanah.
Which is what they call the head of the year.
Okay, yes. Rosh is the head. Ha means the. Shana means year.
Shana Torah.
Head of the year. Okay? Right. So that would go, it is Jewish New Year, for lack of a better term. Where do they get that from?
Yes.
Is it?
They
Future
get
says.
it from Noah, in that the days changed by 6 months in the year. Yeah, which
They've got biblical basis as well. Okay? Let me frame this for you 100%. Leviticus 23 says this will be the beginning of your calendar month. So New Year starts 14 days before Passover in the first month, March, April side. Okay? That is New Year. But with God we have cycles within cycles. How many of you have noticed that? Let me just give you an indication. When we look at cycles, we say it's the festival of first fruits. But we have 3 cycles of first fruits in the 7 feasts that we have. And around Pesach, we have our barley harvest, and we need to go up to Jerusalem with our first fruits. Yes? To give it to God. At Shavuot, we have our wheat, and we are commanded to go up and give of our first fruits. And at Sukkot, it is normally the end of the harvest season, and this is very general, okay? There's other things going on after this, but for the most part, all the grains and all the good stuff is in, and that normally gets associated with the grapes, of which we are commanded to go up and give our first fruits. So which one is the festival of first fruits? Right, if we're looking for a context term, that one. When do we give our first fruits? That one, and that one. So there's cycles within our cycles. Just like we have a daily cycle, according to God's understanding, sunset to sunset. That's one day.
It always had to be there for the harvest.
Right, it's a good physical indication of when it's getting close to that time of year. So when we have our daily cycle, sunset to sunset. Then we have our monthly cycle. Oh no, before I get to monthly, weekly, Shabbat to Shabbat. Then we have our monthly cycle of Rosh Chodesh, which is new moon to new moon. And then we have a yearly cycle, right? Pesach to Pesach, right? And within those cycles, we have cycles. And within those cycles, we have one block, we have a middle stop, and we have another cycle of feasts that we have to get through.
You could go further with sabbatical cycles and then Jubilee cycles.
True. We've got the Shemitah cycle, which is one every 7 years. And then we've got the Jubilee, or the Yovel, which is every 50 years. So God has got cycles within cycles and cycles, trying to get you to understand something that David says in the Psalms. He says, in some of our translations it says, lead us onto your paths of righteousness. The word is ecclesia, I think, not ecclesia. Let me just check. It is the cycles of righteousness, and it's literally from Passover to Passover, from Shavuot to Shavuot, from Shabbat to Shabbat. Everything about my life is focused on God's timing, God's planning, God's agenda. You with me? Okay. So then when we come to the 7th month cycle of feasts, now I don't want to get too into this that I confuse you. We have a verse or two about this. You will celebrate on the first day, on the 7th month. So we've got pictures. But before I get into the pictures, we have an Old Testament mitzvah and we don't have a New Testament fulfillment, so it's very difficult for us to look at Yeshua or something that's already completed and we're going to go, that's what it meant. Let me give you a modern day example. We've had a lot of discussion about when we should start counting the Omer. When is the celebration of first fruits? And we will have Josephus talking about stuff. We will pull references from Joshua. We will go, it says the first day after the Shabbat. Which Shabbat are we talking about? Are we talking about the festival of unleavened bread? And when all of these definitions get confused, we say, stop the bus. God knows. Flick, 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 flick. Yeshua died. Yeshua was buried. And 3 days and 3 nights later, he was resurrected. Right? Flick, flick, flick. 1 Corinthians. He is our first fruits of resurrection. Did it happen 2 days after? Passover goes into the Festival of Unleavened Bread. The day after that, the 14th day into the 15th day. At the end of the 15th day comes the 16th day. That should be night 1 if we're looking at counting of the whole map. But that's not 3 days and 3 nights. Okay, many of your eyes have glazed over. Some of you understand what I'm doing. Yes. We can go back and we can look at Yeshua to see where these things are being fulfilled. Okay?
If you go back to that, it becomes apparent that he was actually crucified on, what was it, a Wednesday afternoon?
Yeah.
Wednesday,
And
Thursday.
Well, the Thursday night was a high Sabbath.
Well, probably the Wednesday
So
evening
Wednesday
or
night to Thursday
the
night
Wednesday evening, Thursday.
was unleavened bread. There was a day in between when they wanted to go buy the
There's a lot of
tinctures and stuff, and then there was the Sabbath, and
There were-
then he rose.
there's lots of possibilities, but the simple fact of the matter is no one disputes that he rose on a Saturday evening and then went to go check on a Sunday morning, the first day of the week. No one disputes that. It's the only constant we have. So we can look at Yeshua and we can look back and we can frame it in our context. I said I didn't want to confuse you. I fear I just did. Okay? What I'm saying is that when we look at the 7th month feast, we don't really have anything that Messiah did already to give us an indication. What we do have is a bunch of promises that talk about things he's going to do. But now I have to look through scripture to try and help me understand this, because all it says is make a teruah. That's nice. What's a teruah? Make a noise. Okay, some people believe it's trumpet, some people believe it's a great shout, some people believe the word in Hebrew is ambiguous. You can make a big noise with a shofar. We know this. We can make a big noise by screaming. We know this. So if we look at the two combined together, do we have a Old Testament picture of someone with a shofar and making a big noise?
Joshua.
Thank you, man. So if we look at it, we go, okay, hang on a second, the word teruah, which, when did we make our loud noise? It was at Jericho, but did they make noise every day? On the 7th day. And our number 7 starts to give us an indication of something here. Okay? What happened at Jericho, that's going to explain to us what's the point of a teruah.
The walls fell down.
Right, okay? Walls are falling down.
It's a breakthrough of some type.
Okay? Breakthrough was at a time of peace, was at a time of war. War. Okay, so teruah immediately gets associated with an alarm. An alarm blast. It's about battle. And God is saying, the battle is mine. You shout and you tell them I'm coming. And when they did, the walls fell down. Right? God appeared. And he took a little move of his pinky and he took the most fortified city that protected the inroads. From Jericho, you could go all the way to the coast, or you could go north or south. If you get through this place, the place is open, it's all yours. Go and take the rest of the promised land. Jericho was the door, it was the gateway. Its walls were so thick that you could have chariot races on them. They had rooms in it. Remember, Rahab's house was, she let him out of the wall. That's one of the walls. When you look at the archaeological things, they have 2 sets of walls. And funny, when that noise happened, the walls didn't crumble down and collapse. The walls fell outward. As if someone just went. And that is completely weird. And if we look at the archaeological evidence and we look at what the Bible says, it says they went in there and they set the place alight. It was an offering to God, first fruits. Right? And we give everything was supposed to, and what they found there was a meter deep pile of ash. So they started digging and they started to clear the dust, and then they saw, yo, this is evidence of a massive fire. And look at the walls. And they go to Joshua 6 and they go, this makes a lot of sense. Okay? So he establishes something here with the Teruah. Alright? Do we have any other scriptures that kind of give us an understanding of what the first day of the 7th month is about?
There's one, sorry. I was thinking, there's one in Psalm 150, which talks about the large blasting, but then way back on Mount
But
Sinai.
Genesis 9 also speaks of and Moses died on the first day of the 7th month.
You want to look at Elvis Quest?
Right?
Have a look.
We know it.
What do you have?
The first time we hear shofar blast, it's the binding of Isaac.
We know that's when we get the picture of a shofar. The first time we really have a shofar blast is at Sinai.
Then we also have Gideon.
Eh?
We also have Gideon.
Getting with what?
With
was
when
that?
they surrounded
You're focusing on the word shofar, not focusing on the first day of the 7th month. Take the context first, then we will frame the shofar. Alright?
I can't Google it. I Googled this.
Genesis 8:13.
Genesis 8.
13. And it was Noah, not Moses.
Alright?
Which
one?
one about
Yes.
the
You want to talk about an ark? Let's talk about an ark.
Oh, man.
What happened on the first day of the 7th month according to Genesis 8:13?
And it came to be the 601st year, the first month, the first day of the new moon, that the waters were dried up from the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked and saw the surface of the ground was dry.
The first day of the what month?
First month, not the 7th month.
First day of the first month, but at the same time they say that it was 6 months behind.
Tradition. Biblical. Give me biblical.
I said Google.
Well, this is, interactive. I'll give you one. So this one, we can safely go. Nehemiah.
Okay, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Why is it that in Exodus 12 he says, and this day shall be to you, the first day, or the first day of the first month? Because obviously there hasn't been.
Well, I think, remember from Noah to the time you're sitting in Egypt, which calendar are you working with? You had God's calendar running the whole way through, but man started making up their own and using their understandings on when certain things should have been established. It's the same as Babylon. Babylon was using a lunar calendar, but yet they have different calendar months, different feast days, different things, and then he had to go back and say, not that way, but this way. Egypt had their own calendar running. Right? So he had to establish, but while he was doing that, he was establishing national Israel. But as we understand nationalistic Israel, you must understand Kingdom of Heaven Israel, because it's about God's calendar, God's time, God's understanding. And in giving them the stories of from Adam to Noah to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, he was establishing a lineage and saying, listen, but those guys left everything they understood, and they were saved, or they were protected, and they were lifted above destruction because of me, and I've established something with them, and that's what I'm going to establish with you. One nation under God, in a sense. We use that loosely today in different parliaments around the world. But he's going to say, this is my framework now, and this is how you're going to celebrate. So he has to adjust their understanding of calendar, just like we had to. Came in where, how many of you refer to Saturday as Shabbat? Didn't, but it existed there the whole time. And he said, this will be a Shabbat for you, and then we go, I'm now taking ownership. March, April was March, April. It was Easter time. But now, no. Now it's about Pesach. And all of a sudden, our alignment changes because of our alignment to God. Our affiliation became the change. Okay? You get me? All right, so look at Nehemiah 8, verse 1. All right, what do we see in Nehemiah 8? Oh, sorry. In my Bible, it might be at the end of...
It's verse 2.
No, at the end of 7. You know what? one day when I'm a big person, I'm going to write proper notes. What's
One inch.
help me out with the page number here?
Oh yeah, okay, so it's 1140.
114.
Yeah, it is, yours is the verse before.
Yeah.
Could Yom Teruah also be a warning that Yom Kippur is coming up?
There are different contexts, so we're going to get into that shofar blast in a second. Okay, so I'm going to read from, mine will be one back. It says, when the 7th month arrived, after the people of Israel had resettled in their towns. So we've already got context, 7th month. All the people gathered with one accord in the open space in the front of the water gate and asked Ezra, the Torah teacher, to bring the scroll of Torah of Moshe, which Adonai had commanded Israel. Israel, the Kohen, brought the Torah before the assembly, which consisted of men, women, and children old enough to understand. It was the first day of the 7th month, facing the open space of the front of the water gate. He read from it to the men, the women, and the children who could understand from early morning until noon, and all the people listened attentively to the scroll of Torah. And he carried on. They literally read day after day going into it. So, what were they doing in this? Ezra called the people to do what? To go to war?
Rededication and commitment.
To assemble. It was about an assembly. It's about gathering. Together for what?
To read the Lord Moses.
It was about Torah. It was about God's instruction. Okay? Another reference, another book that's closely linked with Nehemiah is Ezra 3, verse 1 and verse 6. Tell me a story. Go to Ezra and read.
So read it.
Yes, please.
When the 7th month arrived, after the people of Israel had resettled in their towns, the people gathered with one accord in Jerusalem. Then Yeshua the son of Yotzadak, with his fellow Kohanim, and Zerubbabel the son of Shaltiel, with his kinsmen, organized rebuilding the altar of God of Israel, so that they could offer burnt offerings on it, as it is written in the Torah of Moshe, the man of God. They set up the altar on its former basis. Despite feeling threatened by the people of the surrounding countries, they offered on it burnt offerings to Adonai, the morning and the evening burnt offerings. And he wanted verse 6.
Yeah.
From the first day of the 7th month, they began offering burnt offerings to Adonai, even though the foundation of Adonai's temple had not yet been laid.
Yeah. Okay. So what we have here is we've basically got two things. What sort of time period, to understand what's going on here, what sort of time period were Nehemiah and Ezra, what were they busy establishing? Rebuilding of Jerusalem.
Was the rebuilding of the temple first, and Nehemiah was the building of the walls of Jerusalem.
Right, thank you, sir. So what happened was when they left Babylon, they didn't leave Babylon all at once. Babylon gets conquered by which people? Medo-Persian Empire, and the King Cyrus. Now, King Cyrus was called the Mashiach, the anointed of God, 400 years before he was even born. God still... No, through Isaiah first. Daniel and him only picked him up much later because of Isaiah's writings. God lays down the challenge in Isaiah, and he says, tell me which God can do this. Tell me which God can know what's coming, and I will tell you now. And he goes out to this whole liturgy about Cyrus. Like I said, you look at the timeline, it's 400 years before Cyrus was born. The Medo-Persian Empire wasn't even a thing yet. They were looking at it and they were going, in Isaiah's time, we were worrying about Assyria. After Assyria came Babylon. After Babylon came the Medo-Persian. And he's sitting here and he goes, God's making a proclamation now about an empire that hasn't even risen yet. And funny enough, when we look at Cyrus through, I find it interesting. I'm not going to say that it is 100% biblical evidence. Okay, it's not like gospel. Through the legends of Cyrus, he ran away from his grandfather because he wanted to kill him because someone prophesied over him that he was going to be greater than he is. Fast forward New Testament, we have Herod the Great and we have Yeshua. Okay, they're not related, but same sort of pictures, yes? And he goes away and he gets raised and hidden by what type of people, what occupation were these people? Shepherds. And he learned to become a king as a shepherd. Who does that sound like?
David.
David and
Moshe.
Yeah, David, Moshe, really become a leader, you have to become a shepherd of the flock, right? And we know that Yeshua was born in a manger, right? Okay, archaeologically what we found is a manger is literally a stone basin cut out as a feeding trough. Alright? And what we find is that people had 3 stage homes in the area of Nazareth at the time, more or less. Obviously he was born in Bethlehem, but it's the same sort of time frame. That we had our front section is where we cooked and we sat. This is where we sleep. All of you, you and your kids. The difference between mommy's bedroom and daddy's bedroom was a curtain.
Sure.
This is where we get the sheep. Right. And the sheep were where?
Right at the back.
The front,
In the gospel story. Were they inside or were they outside?
inside.
They were outside. Remember, the shepherds were out in the fields. And that tells us that it had to be a warmish time of year. Definitely not December, for the birth of Messiah, so that the manger area was actually empty. And he was put in a manger, the stone basin at the back of someone's house, more than likely. Alright, we've got this whole story about the innkeeper, and there's no space in the room, and etc., etc. Kind of add on, right?
Mr.
So-
Tabernacle is very full of people.
Yeah. It is. So, but we've got some space at the back, but it's where the sheep and that normally live. But you're going to be like, she's giving birth, make space, right? So they come and they establish this thing at that time. Okay. So don't even know why I'm talking about that anymore. We come back to Ezra and Nehemiah. When we have is under Babylon. I was doing the parallel of Cyrus. Under Babylon gets destroyed. Cyrus comes in, he lets them free, he sends out a decree. There are 2 guys that are anointed and called by God to go and do the work. They're mentioned in that last portion. Zerubbabel and, okay, some translations say Yeshua, some say Joshua. Okay, similar name. Not exactly the same, but similar. Now, Joshua.
Says Yeshua.
Mhm. He was the high priest. Okay? The high priesthood was going to come and re-establish the temple. But he needed someone's authority with him. Made Zerubbabel who? Whose lineage did Zerubbabel come from? It was about yay big and he had ginger hair.
Yeah, it must be Judah.
David, right, King David's lineage. So he had someone who was both from Judah and from the Kohanim side, came together to establish, and one of the first projects they did after clearing the area was set up the altar. And they found the foundations of the altar and they repaired it. And they said from the first day of the 7th month, at the time of this Yom Teruah, there is a time of offerings. For the burnt offerings, does that sound like Jericho to you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because the burnt offering goes completely out.
Exactly. So that which we burnt, and it was a time that we assembled together to listen to the king's words. Okay, now obviously we can look at this and we can go, that sounds very much like Shavuot, doesn't it? The king came down at the sound of a, what?
Shofar.
A shofar blast. Here we have a shofar blast, and he's telling us to assemble to the king.
Also, it also says, despite feeling threatened by the peoples of the surrounding countries,
Right.
they offered burnt offerings. It would have been the same with Joshua and the guys.
It's the same as what's happening today.
Yeah.
Right, look, there are lots of difficulties, okay? When we look at these sort of pictures, it seems to be a time where God also regathered his people out of the wilderness or out of Egypt, led them up to Jericho. He took them out and he regathered them in Israel. Okay? So as you're coming into the promise, what is it about the number 7 that tells you that this is all part of God?
Completion.
Right, 7 days of creation, 7 feasts. 7 and God normally go together, the 7 spirits of God. Talk about Him. It's all about His perfect plan, His perfect completion. So when you start to come into the 7 feast cycle, we go, hang on a minute. 7 tells us that this has been the end of God's creation plan, the end of all the things to come. Make sense? Okay, delusion, eh? Nathan's standing there just like, what are you talking about? Right? So if we look at number 7 from day 1 to day 7, when God created, did He finish creating closer to the 7 or closer to the 1? Closer to the 7, right? So that when He got to day 6, He looked at day 7 and He said, I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to rejoice in this. When it comes to the 7th month cycle, it's about taking a step back, and He's going to bring us into the last piece of creation. Or in our case, recreation. You ready? Let me explain to you using the analogy I'm kind of going to close off with without losing it with too much imagery. At Passover, there was a cup that Yeshua took, and He said, this is my blood, drink it. What was the point of that cup?
Blood of the new covenant.
Okay, biblically a part of the renewed covenant, but what else? Remember, He stopped the order of the meal, and He was doing what?
He said, I will not drink of this cup until heaven and earth pass.
Daddy,
Not talking about that.
we have to repeat.
Nope. Well,
Didn't he also say that it was part of a marriage covenant or something?
thank you, sir. It was a betrothal. Right. It was a proposal. Now let's frame the feasts in the understanding that this is all about a marriage. Okay? Okay. Pesach, He proposes. We say, hopefully, you said, I do. You drink of the cup. And because you drank of the cup, you say,
Accept.
I accept. Right? So remember, who's going to frame the ancient wedding custom for me?
Necessary.
You want to do it? Alright. Start from the beginning. What do we do?
The son will find someone he likes, and the father will go and do negotiations.
Right?
And once
What negotiation?
with the father's the bride.
Bride, okay, he would go talk to them, but he would discuss the bride price.
The bride price, and then once the bride price has been settled, then the son would go to the bride to be and offer her a cup. And if she drank of the cup, it would say that I accept everything you are, and I'm giving you everything I've got. And then that would be the deal done. She was now seen as being engaged. Then he would leave and back to his father's house, and he'd make a place for them to stay. And the father of the groom would inspect the house, and then he would tell him when it's ready for him to go fetch the bride. And between 6 months to a year would be the general time it would take. The son would then go and fetch her, and she would be ready from the time of the proposal, because she doesn't know when he's coming. Then he won't go into the house of the bride, because he's excited, he's coming like a thief in the night, is what they would say. And a shofar would blast, and all the brides, all the ladies engaged would rush out to see whose groom it is. And then he would take her, sometimes lifting her up in like a carriage or something, and then he would take her to his house, and they'd stay there and get married over 7 days. And on the 7th day, would be the consummation would take place.
Alright. You guys all get that? Now it's coming by the shofar.
I would add to that by saying that it was generally between 6 months to 2 years that you could go away from the wedding. Not 6 months.
Well, it depends. Normally at least 6 months, generally speaking, a year. Sometimes it would take longer, sometimes less, depending on what building he was making. Okay, but we normally gauge between 6 months and a year. Bridesmaids would come out.
Also, it would depend on the father. Nope, this house isn't good enough for my daughter. Start again.
Break it down, start again. Alright? And then kidnap. Alright. Yeah. We're going. Okay, so what we're doing, sorry, can everybody see that? Okay, so this is basic outline. If we understand that Yeshua is all about repeating what Daddy did, and Dad was all about Sinai and about betrothing a nation unto him, establishing God's kingdom on earth. Agreed? Yeshua came and he spoke about the kingdom of heaven, establishing it on earth at times. But before he left, he said, I am my Father's son, I'm going to do what he does. Right? He goes in and he says, all right, let's have a Passover. You understand Passover is about freeing you. It's about freeing you to make a choice. So this is going to be your choice. I'm going to go do the work to free you, but I'm going to do this. So he would go in, the bride price would be negotiated. What was the price paid to get you free? His life, his blood. He died to have you. Okay? Then he would offer up this, when he offered up the cup, you accept. Every time you do this, remember me, he said. If you drink of the cup, you're saying, I accept everything you are, and I give you everything I am. There is no half in marriage. There is no half in this relationship. There is no, I'm going to take everything of Christ and make sure he covers all my sins while I go skip around, carrying on doing whatever I want to do, how I want to do that. We're going to get into that in the next session. That's kind of the definition of lawlessness. Your way, not his way. Okay? He goes to prepare a place. Give me a reference. What does Yeshua say? In my Father's house there are many. And I go to prepare a place for you. Where's the Father's house? In heaven, right? So we see in Revelations, Yeshua ascended in heaven and he was busy with the Father, was he not? Right. And then he comes at that time, while he's gone, the bride is getting ready. Remember, he spoke about the foolish bridesmaids. Remember, the bridegroom came when? In that parable. Yeah, in the middle of the night. And he doesn't go, oh, what a silly woman, she's asleep. He's just so excited, he can't wait. Okay, so they're in the state of preparation, getting ready, waiting. He could come at any moment. Are we ready? You see, the oil in the lamp parable is about preparation.
But they were all sleeping first.
Yeah, but they weren't moaned for sleeping. They were moaned because they didn't have the oil. Which is a, go to the guy and go buy more oil. It's the middle of the night. Really, is he open? He's not. Time's done. There is nothing else you can do. He's come to fetch you, but so we're busy getting ready. Are we prepared for his coming? Are we anticipating? Are we waiting for him? At any time it could happen now. Or am I going to look back and go, I'm not prepared? We have to be in the state of readiness. We have to take it seriously that he is going to come back. And he's going to come knock at your door. He's going to shut from mid-heaven side and he's going to go, let's go. I'll explain it in a bit. While he's busy, he says, you know, Daddy looks at the building and he makes sure that this is the home that's going to last the two of you. He doesn't want you to stay in something broken down or something that's going to fall on your head because the son got too excited and built too quickly. Yeshua says, they ask him, when is all this going to happen? He says, no one knows the time except the Father. Once he gives the approval, I'm coming. Oh, don't you worry, I'm coming. And he's busy, and he's going, and he's building, and he's doing it, and God will say, at the right time, you will go. And when the time comes, normally the village would come, and they go, come, we're going to go fetch someone that's going to join our village, join our family, and they would go off in a procession, and when they get close, what do they do? Make a noise, blow a shofar. It's the warning. It's the time. You are going to be gathered to us now. You're going to come into the presence of your King now. You are going to be sitting in the house of the Father under his banner. Are you ready?
What stage
blowing the shofar at night, it's not,
Well,
even if
the
you hear the
point-
shofar, you're not going to be able to get oil.
No, well that's the thing, you have to have oil before you go to sleep.
You've got, yeah, so you've got
Mm,
to
don't-
be in
the-
a state of constant.
The point about that parable is that they were given an amount of oil, but they probably misused it, so they never kept enough just in case he came that night. If we wanted to push the analogy a little further, we could say you were given a specific amount of anointing, but you used it for yourself. God gives you the gift of wisdom when you build a company instead of building His kingdom. And when you come back, you're like, oh, you're at the door. Let me go find some people. Come, people, God's coming. And it's like, well, you've got a $1 billion company, but you haven't saved one person.
Wow.
Good job. You used what I gave you, and you misappropriated what it was for. You understand? Right. So when he blows the shofar, right, he says in 1 Thessalonians, he says he will come and fetch you the sound of the great trumpet. Now, funny enough, Jewish tradition has it. There's 4 different types of blasts. The Takia Gadol is the last blast they blow at the end of Yom Teruah. They blow it 100 times that day. And the 100th one is this long blast. At Shavuot, I got Aubrey to blow Takia Gadol, and he blew it as their understanding is it's about a call to come up. It's a great blast. So when the broom comes and he blows this, 1 Thessalonians 4 verse 16 I think it is, okay? And you will be called up to the clouds with him. When he comes down, notice the groom never enters the house of the Father. You've already been bought, he's going to stand on the out. So 1 Thessalonians says he's going to stand in the clouds and he's going to blow a trumpet and we're going to be called up to him. They're going to come and they're going to abduct her. They're going to take her and they're going to carry her off. The negotiations are done, but I'm just collecting what's mine. And I'm going to be taken up into the clouds to celebrate a wedding feast, which generally lasts 7 days. Interesting that we get to this place and we've got 7 full days, and then the 8th day seems to be something new. Because after the 7 days of celebrating, there's a new creation, a new echadness that is taking place.
Same sort of principle as circumcision, funnily enough.
Absolutely. Complete dedication, a sign of a covenant, a promise that is established in a covenant. And again, then we start reminding ourselves that Daddy came down with a covenant. It was called the Ketubah.
And water libation, is that on the 7th or the 8th? That's where they take the water from the pool of Siloam and...
But never been allowed. I think that was on the 8th day. I think that was on the 8th day, on the great day, which is called Hoshana Rabbah.
When Yeshua said about living water.
Yeah, that we'll deal with when we get to Sukkot. Right? So when you start to look at this, even though we have this sort of celebrate this feast, notice it's the one day I can't give you an exact date for, because we're looking for the new moon to be sighted. So last year was a fantastic practice run. Everybody comes, everybody goes up, sorry, no moon sighted in Israel, go home.
Everybody leave.
Everybody, like, but we're here, let's have a party. Like, but today's not the day. No one knows the hour or the time. Father does. He knows when that is going to be visible. He knows when you're going to see it. He knows. We just have to be ready. So you've got your picnic baskets, you've got your party shoes on, you're going to pitch up and you're going to go, no, the wedding's tomorrow.
And that was a lot of preparation
Or-
for that day. And it was the next day.
At least we were prepared, man.
You were prepared. You had the oil. The oil was ready. You appeared and we will go, all right,
It's not changing.
tomorrow. But what happens if it happened the other day and you guys were chilling at home and you're sitting there and it was a normal day and all of a sudden we get that confirmation and that shofar sounds. You're in your pajamas, you haven't packed your lunches, you haven't got your foodies, you haven't got your celebration shoes going on. Nothing's ready. Then all of a sudden, you're going to see people running around, smashing things together, going, oh no, we should have packed before. Yom Teruah is specifically about a time you will not know of. It is about the time the shofar blast. It is about the time where God, remember that shofar will signal two things. One, you go home. Amen, hopefully. Two, God's coming. For the world, that's a battle. For His people, that's a betrothal. Just like the light that separated Egypt and Israel. There was light on this side and darkness on that side. For us, it's an exciting time. For the world, they're going to freak out properly. If He came at the sound of a great shout, at a sound of a shofar, we should not be freaked out by this. We should be excited by it. But you're only excited when you're counting up until the day. So I'm not saying He's going to come on a Yom Teruah. I'm saying it's very, 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 very likely He will.
But he
Principle is
said
there.
he'll come on a day when he's not expected.
Yeah, but again, you don't know which day it was. But if we follow the logic, I think how many of the people will be ready on a Yom Teruah? How many people will look at Yom Teruah and go, it was about the Battle of Jericho, and go, please, why would He come and fetch us today?
Yeah.
I think we have to stop and we have to think about what is His heart all about. It's likely. It's very likely. For me, the last three feasts on which you're going to get into, Yom Kippur signifies the great throne judgment in Revelations 20, and Sukkot is about the fullness of new creation. But at the same time, we have that dwelling. The point of Sukkot and Tabernacles is that wedding feast that needs to take place. There are cycles within cycles. Okay? Long.
God created the heavens and earth and everything nice and wonderful in 6 days.
Right?
Yeshua's been up there for over 2,000 years. Makes you wonder what He's been up to and what He's made for us.
These are after 2 days.
Remember the rooms that He's building is not, again, guys, let's just settle this now quickly. When you leave and you go up and you might be in heaven for a time, you are not meant to stay there forever. That is not your home. You will come back down to earth. New heaven, new earth, new body, new creation. Isaiah says the end is revealed in the beginning. Adam and Eve was made from the Adamah, the dust. He's going to recreate earth, fix everything, and just as He did at Shavuot, just as He did in the Garden of Eden, just as it says in Revelations, the New Jerusalem will come adorned like a bride and descend down to earth. You might be there for a time, while He's busy dealing with creation. But when it's all set and ready for you, then He's going to bring you into the new creation. Okay? Alright, prayer time is every time.
Sorry, just one last thing I was going to mention. I was trying to find scripture for it.
Yeah.
But I don't know where exactly it is, but there is a scripture that relates to a Messianic reader. But it says that God's people will know the season.
Yes, you'll know the seasons. But he was talking about Noah. But there's a different thing as well. In that context, he's talking about Noah. Alright, where you are, just bow your head.